Hi, I'm Michael Muccio, author of America's Battle for Free Enterprise, The Power of Incentive and Competition. And today we're talking about chapter 2 of the book entitled How the Gipper Got It Right, Reagan and Today. The question is, was the economy worse in 1980 or was it worse in 2008? Well, according to Professor Ed Lazear at the Graduate Business School at Stanford, he said the economy was, in many ways, was worse in the early 80s than it is today. Experiencing a double dip recession, the question is, what did Reagan do that enabled us to experience the kind of growth? Well, first of all, he lowered taxes and he worked with the Federal Reserve chairman they did not want to print more money. They wanted to keep the dollar strong. So Reagan created an atmosphere and an environment for free enterprise in the free market to flourish, for people to take risks, because he knew that there was high unemployment at the time, and he knew that in order to create jobs, that we needed lots of small businesses and entrepreneurs to flourish. So he created that atmosphere for that to occur. So let's take a look at the numbers in the growth from 1980 to 84 and compare that to 2008 to 2012. Well, first of all, out of every recession, there should be a bounce back. If you trust the free market, there's always going to be fluctuations in the market. And when there is a recession, that's naturally going to occur in free markets. When there's a recession, there's usually some kind of a snapback back into a recovery. Well, what we've experienced from 2008 to 2012 is the worst recovery in any kind of memory. It's worse than even the recovery out of the Great Depression. So the question is, what was it that Reagan actually did? Well, and what was the actual numbers? Well, see, him and Paul Volcker, they had to really hold to their guns about not printing more money, keeping the dollar strong, and trusting the free market. So it's hard to do. I mean, the governments tend to want to get their hands involved and with their discretionary ideas come up with something. And I'm not saying that there isn't in some cases some things need to be done. I would never second guess the idea that there's sometimes when some sort of government intervention is acceptable, but it's got to be very, very minimal, and it can't continue for a very long time. We need to keep our trust in free enterprise and many small businesses and the power of incentive and competition. So they held to their guns. It was difficult in 81 and 82, but in 83, the snapback was great. I mean, GDP was down -2%, and the snapback went up to +7%. And then the average, the rest of Reagan's term up through 88 was a 6% growth, whereas today the GDP growth is only 2%. So, and plus when Reagan put the policies intact that he did, it really triggered 25 years of economic growth until the recession in 2007. So we really need to think in terms of what was it. Quite frankly, I think it should be studied in universities, exactly what Reagan did in the early 80s, because what he did, I mean, we have a historical track record there to see that it actually worked and how to get us out of it. And as if Lazear is Professor Ed Lazear, he making the point that in many ways is worse than today. Now, here's the question that people will bring up. They'll say, didn't Reagan increase the national debt a great deal? And yes, he did. But here's the situation. Because GDP growth was 82% from 1981 up through 88, increasing the debt you could handle it. But we can't handle it today because the revenue growth is not there. The growth has only been 8% from 2008, an average of 8% from 2008 to 2012, whereas 82% in Reagan's terms. But what was going on in the early 80s that caused there to be an increase in the debt? Well, we're involved in an arms race with the Soviet Union, first of all. So they kept spending more money on defense, and we were spending more money, and Reagan wanted to create a system whereby a system whereby you could shoot incoming missiles down right out of the sky. It was called, they used to make fun of it back then, call it Star Wars. Well, the fact is we're seeing how that air defense system works in Israel just in recent days. So And when the Soviet Union tried to go step for step and spend the money in defense, their economy couldn't handle it like ours. With the free market, free enterprise that we have experiencing, they couldn't keep up with it. And it's one of the things that contributed to the downfall of the Soviet, and the crumbling of the Soviet Union that eventually then occurred in 1981 or 1991. But that occurred because of Reagan's policy of peace through strength. And that's, see, the economy of the United States being strong is our greatest, that is our greatest way of staying safe and secure and to defend ourselves as a nation, is to have a strong economy. And it certainly worked in our butting heads with the Soviet Union. So, and the other reason that the balanced budget, I mean, Reagan was a great proponent of balanced budgets, and he sent them to the House every year. But I remember how he used to butt heads with Tip O'Neill, and he, so they negotiated back and forth. But once again, even though his balanced budgets left the House unbalanced, still you could handle the increase in the national debt because the revenue growth was so great. So we should study what was done back in those early 80s, and it should be duplicated today. Well, we'll be right back to discuss more of America's battle for free enterprise, the power of incentive and competition, in just a few minutes.